what was the next topic you wanted to move into?
Well, the first thing that I wanted to, I guess, like talk about again is like, and it seems safe to say that it's just like from my experiences and just like my observations
Yeah.
from whether it's like other podcasts or like books that I've read, where it oftentimes, and like we can kind of both touch on each of our experiences, but
Yeah.
you mentioned purpose,
Yeah.
mission quite a bit, and that's something that I really want to hit on because it's so important to me, and it's something that I don't believe we talk about enough, especially at our age and whatnot.
Yeah.
But just like hearing you talk about, your experience with cooking and whatnot, where really just for me to hear that, it just seems like it's like your vessel for your purpose, which is ultimately your way of, serving God's mission, like being able to bring people together through this communal thing that is cooking, being able to provide them comfort, a sense of being like seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah.
And
just cared for.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's like you described with that student from Malaysia, that story, it's like, that's what we all want at the end of the day. It's like, it doesn't matter like if you're getting good grades or if you're getting like great jobs or like whatever's going on. It's like, you just want to feel seen, heard, and understood. You want to feel like you belong and matter in this world. And like the thing, and that's the beautiful thing to me, is that cooking is your vessel for that in such a beautiful way. And it's like, during that time, it's like, as much as you went through a dark period of your life, you came out with so much light, and that radiates so clearly in like just my experience with you these past few days, and evidently in the people that are around you, and just those stories that you told me. It's like you really are, and that's the thing, right? It's like people who are going through hardship or tough times are drawn to the light, and that you provide them that with cooking.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. I mean, both for people who are going through hardship and hard times, because I think that, when people are in a difficult place, that's where there's opportunities for us to bring healing in whatever way that we're equipped, whether that's literally as a doctor, like my wife, or through like a soul healing from like food, and just, that sense of somebody wants to provide for you and they're just giving you a meal. Like there's something, I think, very, very beautiful and comforting about that. I think that, on the other side, it's also celebrations are just as important, providing like fertile ground for people to come together. And, when people ask me like, what kind of restaurant do you want? I think it's very indicative that I don't start out with a cuisine, because the cuisine's actually personally for me, like I love Cantonese food and Malaysian food, and in all likelihood, that's what I want to do, for a restaurant that I open. But that's not actually the main point of it.
Yeah.
The point is that it's a place that's accessible, price-wise, and just the environment, the atmosphere. I want it to be a place that kids can celebrate their parents' birthday at, and that two friends can hang out and have deep conversations at dinner. And I want it to be a place where people don't feel like they're being pushed around all the time, but where it's hey, we're here to serve you, and to what can we get you? Could we get you water? Can we recommend something that's yummy that will if you're hungry, just come eat. That's the vibe.
It's like you're just cared for. Like you described earlier. And a few thoughts here, but at the end of the day, it's like cooking is a vessel, and the restaurant is like that vessel for your purpose. And I guess you said a few things just now that kind of give me an idea of what that purpose is to you. But if you could, I guess and that's the thing, it was purpose is so difficult to summarize because it's ultimately a feeling, and it's it's so much deeper than that. But if you could sort of say in one line, or again, there's no word count or word limit here, but what would you say your purpose in life is?
Love God, love your neighbor. Okay. It's very simple. I think it's good that it's simple. How it plays out and how to do that, I think much more complicated. But because there's so many different ways to do it. And I think that's why, I had this brings up just memories of big arguments that I've had with my mom where she's like, you have no purpose in life. Like you're so, like you're just always shifting. Like you want to be a computer scientist and a marine biologist and then a chef. And she's like, tomorrow you're going to tell me you want to be something else. And I'm like, yeah, because ultimately they're just professions.
Yes.
They're not callings.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot of things that I could see myself being. I've talked to Hope before about just, I think getting real with it. Being a restaurant owner, especially of the kind of restaurant that I'm saying, is probably going to be really hard work and you won't make that much money from it. If I wanted to make money doing a restaurant, I would do like Chick-fil-A or like Panda Express or something, you know, like something like that.
Yeah.
But like, so, you know, and getting honest with her, we were kind of like, what if this kind of like schedule and this like dedication, like, would it cause like breakdowns in our family, for example? And I'd be like, well, it's just a profession. Yeah. It's not my priority.
Yes.
And, you know, I was kind of like, you know, honestly, I think that being a teacher, for example, is another thing that really vibes with my values.
Yes.
Like, I have a lot of respect for teachers. I feel very strongly that we don't respect them enough in America.
Agreed.
Like,
yeah, agreed.
I feel like other countries give their teachers like the same level of respect that they give their doctors.
Exactly.
But like,
literally, yep.
But for some reason in America, we don't. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
But like, that is something that I would find deeply like purpose fulfilling and meaningful, that could just handle like the realities of like, gotta eat, you know, you've got to have time to spend with your family. And I feel like I could do that being a teacher. But yeah, so like that's the thing, like the purpose is deeper. And I think that having that sense of purpose leaves you with a certain sense of, at least for me, security, where when my mom was like, you have no direction in life, I was like, no, I know exactly what my direction is.
Wow.
And then she'd be like, oh, what is it? And I would tell her that line, love God, love others. And she's like, but that's not a direction. That's like a, you know, and I'm like, no, that is the direction.
Yes.
Like there's so many things that I could do that would fulfill that purpose. And it extends beyond just the career. It extends into our interaction right now and my relationship with my wife and my relationship to others, what I do with my time. Like, you know, it's a really a big scale picture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say there, and I resonate with that a lot, where I guess like, the first thing is like, I think it's the thing, right, where it's like ultimately your hardship revealed to you what your purpose is. And the thing is that purpose is always known to you. It's simple, right? Mm-hmm. And I have my own experience with that as well, where it's like, it's so simple. Yeah, we think it's like this like outlandish thing that we have to like search for far and wide across the narrow sea, but it's like, it just takes something, because purpose, like you said, is so deeply rooted and embedded, but it also takes a level of hardship that matches that to be able to reveal itself. And it seems very clear to you, like that's what occurred in your case. And I resonate with that so much, where at the end of the day, I see this all the time, where purpose, like, ultimately, that's the North Star. That is that, and knowing your sense of purpose, which I resonate so much with what you just said, it clears away everything. It's like, no matter what you do, whether it's like an interaction and a conversation, whether it's like what you choose as a profession to pay the bills, whether it's like how you just like are by yourself. It guides how you live your life. And in that sense, there's just such a level of comfort and security, and like knowing that that is your purpose, and like that is like what you are meant to do here. And in the same sense that like you said with professions, it's like, I think about it like cars, where it's like purpose is like ultimately like if you're trying to get like your purpose to like get from here to here, you can get there in so many different ways. You can ride a bike, you can walk, you can ski, you can do whatever. It doesn't matter, but ultimately it's what calls most to you, and that's going to change at different times throughout your life. And I feel the same way with me in terms of like creative stuff. It's like there is no one profession. Like I thought at first, like growing up, because that was my dream, was like YouTube. But I've realized now, having done it for a bit, it's like there's so many other possibilities that are out there that can allow me to serve my own purpose. Which it's so interesting that you mentioned it's like so simple, because when I did a lot of like reflection and whatnot, I defined for myself like what is my purpose, and it was so lengthy at first. I need to pull up the journal entry. It's in my first video. But it's like a short paragraph. Basically.
It's like a little essay.
It's something about like my purpose is to like be able to connect with others in a way that helps them live meaningful and fulfilling lives. And like the thing is, that's short. That's like it's even longer than that.
Yeah.
But now it really is just how do I empower others to believe and dream more? That's my purpose. And it's like that guides everything.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's like that was born from like my own experience that we talked about, like growing up, where like I just felt like I was not believed in.
Yeah.
I was told who I couldn't be.
Yeah.
Like even my own parents were like, they didn't believe in me. Like no one believed in me.
Yeah.
Like no one, like all the possibilities that I had for my life, like I didn't feel like I didn't feel like worthy to pursue those.
Yeah.
But it was the people that I watched like on YouTube that gave me a sense of, and like I think that's a beautiful thing where it's like about like, creatives or like creators, whatever. It's like and just in general, it's you can form like mentors or like models for how you want to live your life without ascribing to like any one individual.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like different YouTubers, like for example, like a white Mormon family.
Yeah.
It was like my sense of like connection and belonging. It felt like I like was loved and cared for in the sense that I didn't feel at home at times.
Yeah.
This like buff Hispanic dude was like my like he started a company where his like company's motto is literally learn more, be more, dream more.
Yeah.
And he inspired me to be like, I can be anything I aspire to be and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like having experienced that at such an early age to ultimately reveal it's like nothing new.
Yeah.
But it revealed itself so much later in my life. And like the thing is, I had so many mini experiences, whether it was training people in the gym, talking to people on the sidelines, serving as like a tutor or a mentor or like whatever.
Yeah.
Those were all in that vein of empowering people to believe and dream more.
Yeah.
And ultimately now, like when I think about purpose, and I don't know if you've heard of this concept called Ikigai.
I've heard of it. I don't remember it. It's a Japanese concept.
I'll show you. I actually have a tattooed on my upper chest.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Basically, I came across this concept during another depths of like a low period for me. It was like December of 2021.
Yeah.
It was like 3 months into working full time in my job, in which for context was investment banking.
Yeah.
And I was really asking myself, like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Because my job was taking me away from the most important thing that mattered to me in my life, which is clearly relationships.
Yeah.
Which is so clear to like, that was like what I lacked growing up and clearly what I like sought the most.
Yeah.
But my actions were not reflecting what I valued. And I came across this concept, Ikigai, which is a Japanese concept. It translates to a purpose for being or why you get up in the morning. And at that time in my life, when I saw that, I was like, holy crap, I need to like look more into this.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up is because ultimately like Ikigai, it's like this 4-way intersection between what you're good at, what you can get paid for, what the world needs more of, and it's like what the world needs more of, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and like what you enjoy or something.
Oh, okay.
So it's like 4 circles that I'll show you later. Yeah. And it's like if it's an intersection between 2 circles, let's say it's like you're good at it and you get paid for it, it's like a profession. If it's like something that the world needs more of and you enjoy, it's like something else. But none of those will really be your purpose or why you get up in the morning until they are all fully intersected. And your Ikigai is the intersection of all 4 in the sense that when they are all like one, that is just your way of being. Like there is no sort of like turning it on or off, like, whether it's like, you may be like from 9 to 5, like in my case right now, I'm not really fully living my purpose. I am in certain ways, but not fully. But it's when all those intersect, that is your Ikigai. And that seems kind of similar to what you were saying, where it's like ultimately what I believe is like we have to find what we are most naturally suited for to serve that purpose. And for some people it might be teaching, for some people it might be being a doctor, for you it might be being a chef or whatever else you choose to get into. But ultimately it's about figuring out what it is that you are uniquely suited for that no one else can be in the world. Because I think that's what purpose is. It's like purpose is like you are unique in the sense of your experiences and your skill set to fulfill that purpose.
You feel suited for it in a way that like speaks to your, we talked earlier about like going way back to like intelligence and like ability. But it's like your collection of abilities and desires and things like that, like the chances that all of those align, it's like very uniquely you kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear, like, just given what I said, like, if you want to kind of expand upon that, with that information. But when I think about my own, it's like, when I think about empowering others to believe and dream more, right? It's like, obviously I experienced a point in my life where I was not able to feel believed and empowered in. And ultimately what I recognized through those experiences I described to you, whether it's like training, mentorship, and so forth, and even my experience now, like creatively, it's like what I'm suited for, and like the thing is, I was journaling and breaking this down for myself.
Yeah.
And I realized, and that's how I kind of came to the conclusion of like YouTube, which I guess segued into like just being a creative.
Yeah.
Is that ultimately like I'm pretty damn good at being able to connect with people one-on-one. And being able to like make them feel like seen, heard, and understood, and like being able to provide the space for them, but then also informing that connection, being able to then empower them and being able to like help them like point things out they might have noticed before to help them believe and dream more. And like there's no one else that can do that but me.
Yeah.
And given the context, like again, like my experiences, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like hypothetically, someone could have the exact, not that it, but like hypothetically in a different Spider-Verse or whatever, it's like, someone could have the exact same experience, the exact same qualities, right?
Yeah.
But there's like one slight nuance that changes the game entirely.
Yeah.
And say like hypothetically, it's like, oh, like I'm Asian, but if I was white, like people relate to me a lot more or on a deeper level because I'm Asian. I have that collective. Or like if I was white, it'd be different. And it's like ultimately, it's like your unique set of experiences and qualities make you the only person in the world who can speak to that purpose or serve that purpose in like the deepest way that you want to make that impact.
Right. So like in your example with YouTube, it's kind of like the totality of your identity, and like, the things that you care about, your values, your background, your previous experiences, they combine in such a way that if you changed one thing, even if that purpose was very similar, or you could even overall say like the simple version of that would be like the same in your alternate universe self, the exact like effect of what you're doing, it's only you.
Exactly.
It's only you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see a lot of truth in that, and I think that, in the process of us fulfilling and kind of figuring out how this Ikigai, like what it actually looks like in our life practically. Yeah. I think that we both recognize that the true potential or like the true reach of that thing that we're looking for is only us. Yes. It's very helpful to find lots of people who are very closely adjacent ones. Yep. Or just people who are doing things that look similar. Yeah. So that we're able to both identify like how ours might be slightly different given our unique set of experiences. Yep. But to be encouraged by, because I think that I actually, I believe very deeply that creativity and originality don't truly exist in that we make something out of nothing. Oh yeah. Yep. I think we really need and deeply rely on other people's stories, ideas, ways of doing things, and then we modify them to be true to our unique thing, right? And I think, also that's why it's so important for like, just what you shared about, for example, your YouTube channel, of other people who may not feel comfortable seeking out, maybe their purpose is also to be like a coach and a mentor and somebody who excels at one-on-one conversations and allows people to open up. And they may not know that that's like even a valid way of doing things until they see you do it. You know? And a few things here were like, I think that's, and like again, right, a core part of Ikigai is that you enjoy it. Where it's like, you mentioned, again, you're an incredibly talented guy, as I've already experienced the past few days, and it's like, you could easily pursue any of the things that you're talented at as like, a profession, but ultimately it's about like what sings to you the most. And I think that's the most important thing for people is like, because again, like a lot of people will choose kind of to what you were saying, where it's like, there's like in society, there's like a traditional set of like, like I said, professions that like we see as like a way to be purposeful to serve society, like being a doctor, being like a therapist or like a coach or something like that. But ultimately, it's like if that doesn't resonate with you, then that's not your purpose, because you're not going, like you're gonna like sort of resent doing it. You're gonna feel like you're obligated to, not because you want to. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like purpose is like something you want to do. You don't feel like you have to like drag yourself
to wherever it is you're due to like perform your profession. And in that sense, I agree with like, we're so much individuals who are like just, we make sense of the world and ourselves through stories and whatnot. And like that's thing. It's like nothing is unique. Whether it comes to like cooking, writing, whatever, it's like you garner inspiration from like the stories you hear from others, but then you apply your own unique set of like experiences and personalities to it. And that's ultimately like what I believe creativity is. It's just like you're expressing your truest self, your experiences, your thoughts and emotions in whatever sort of like medium you choose. And oftentimes it takes someone else to inspire and show you that there is a possibility for that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. I'm like thinking about I don't know. This is like way more off topic, but it was actually about like originality in terms of like inspiring, like taking inspiration from others and like figuring out how to make it your own in cooking. Like I just found myself thinking like why it can feel so difficult to cook sometimes, actually. For myself at home.
Okay.
And I think it's because it's really intimidating to not know if the thing that you're going to make will be good or not.
Okay, yeah, I hear you.
Right?
Yeah.
So in the sense of like, it's deeply connected, I think, with what we're talking about purpose. And I'm trying to explain, I think, why most of us, like just humans at large, we really want to do things with our lives that look like something else that other people are doing and that they've become successful at. It's the same reason why we want recipes when we cook. Because somebody else made it and it tasted really good.
Yeah.
So you're like, if I follow their steps and their ingredients and their methods, I should be able to make something that tastes good.
Yes.
And so like in the same way, if what you want is a meaningful life and you find somebody else and you're very inspired by it, maybe you want to just copy it because it's safe.
Yes.
Like you feel like, oh, it's a guaranteed good result.
Yes.
But it's not always the case, right?
Not at all, yeah.
Because the way that like we follow recipes sometimes is like, depending on the truth is that usually there's some stuff that's lost in translation.
Yes.
As the other person is trying to like write about their recipe, there's details about how you have to mix certain things together.
Yes.
About how finely you need to chop certain vegetables. Like I feel like anybody who's tried to make a recipe has encountered the frustration of being like, they told me to cut the vegetables.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to cut them? You know?
Yeah. Like, it's like, do I want slices or cubes?
Yeah, like, you want slices or cubes, or like how big do you want the cubes? And like they're like, put like 2 pinches of salt. Like how big pinches of salt?
Yeah, it's like how big are my fingers?
Yeah. Like my hands are smaller than yours.
Yeah.
And so in cooking, then, this is why I love cooking more than baking, in my opinion.
Okay.
Is that a lot of it is about tasting.
Yes.
And as you cook, you taste to be like, does this taste right? Do I like how this tastes?
Yeah, yep.
Sometimes you're like actually, it's really bland.
Yeah.
Or like it's dry, like the texture is wrong.
Yes.
And you like, you don't know what it is, but it really could be things as simple as like the pieces of beef that you chopped were too small, so they dry out a lot faster.
Yeah, yep.
But like you tried to follow their recipe, but like it didn't work,
Yes.
And I think that like when it comes to life, like when we try to copy other people, nobody can give you an exact blueprint of how they did it. And they oftentimes lack like the self-awareness or like even the knowledge to know like some things come to them naturally. Like the guy who wrote the recipe for like the beef stew you want to make, he doesn't need to think about how big he needs to cut his beef because that's how he cuts it every time.
Exactly.
Like he's just used to it.
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
And he probably figured that out through like a lot of trial and error. Like I bet the first couple times he made his mom's amazing beef stew recipe or whatever, like it wasn't that good, Like he had to work on that, right?
Yes.
So, I think that like, and I think a big part of it is just acknowledging too that as we go about figuring out how our purpose manifests.
Yes.
Too, it's probably, we're going to have a couple screw ups.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe the YouTube thing or maybe the chef thing for me, 2 years later, I'm going to be like, I think there's a lot of things about this that no longer line up with my values. And because there are things that I didn't know going into it.
Yes.
That like it doesn't line up, you know? But the important thing is that you're cooking the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have so much to say there to jump in, but that's the thing is like, well, first off, like we most recently said, it's like your values are always like, they're always kind of rearranging themselves. It's like, you know, it's like sometimes like depending on the situation and your circumstances, like some values may appear like more resonant than others. Mm-hmm. And the ultimate part, and like this is, and like I love that you brought it back to life. Because I was like, dude, this is such like such a segue into like how this all fits into life, because there is no blueprint for a well-lived life that you can follow, yet so many people ascribe to one. And I say that as someone who did. Yeah. Because I say that as someone who had parents who ascribed to one and they passed it down into me. Mm. And it's so clear as day that like so many people in society ascribe to the same definition of success. It's like, just generally speaking, oh, like, you know, having like a certain salary, being able to go on vacations, pay for your kids' tuition, have a driveway like with like 2 cars and whatever.
It's the American dream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like I've had conversations with people who like, I'll be like, hey, so like why are you working this hard? Like why are you working in like this like grueling profession? And like they would say like the same things, like, oh, like pay for my kids' tuition, live, live comfortably. I'm like, but like that person also said that. And that person also said that. And that person also said that. So it's like, is it really yours, or are you just like adopting it as your own and like not really tasting it? And I think that's the biggest thing, where it's like you're just taking it and not tasting it for yourself to see if your unique palate or like your experiences, like who you are, resonates with that. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I feel like tasting is like this synonymous with reflection. Yeah. You know, it's like, because when you taste, like you instantly reflect, good or bad, resonate or not. And people don't take time to reflect, which I feel like that was my greatest attribute that I cultivated in like my last year of school, that I brought into my adult life, was like I reflect like relentlessly. Mm-hmm. And that's like, I don't even know if people understand, where it's like just how much reflection I do. Yeah. I'm like deconstructing every single my day. Every single I'm deconstructing every day. Yeah. And then I'm doing it on like a weekly basis, then a monthly basis, then a quarterly basis. Yeah. Like doing that, constantly just like tasting more than I probably should, has helped me iterate on my life a lot faster than most people do. Yeah. Because people are always surprised, like, dude, like how did you at like your age like already just like, you know, choose to forgo all of this? And like I say this fully acknowledging that you did this even earlier, which is like which is incredible to me. But in the sense that people don't do that. Like they don't reflect, they don't take time to think for themselves. And then like they taste it, they're like, what? Like shouldn't I have arrived at like this great recipe? Yeah. And that's the thing where, someone might have like, again, like the person who wrote the recipe, it worked for them, but it's not going to work for you. Yeah. And like I'm sure there's someone way, way back in the history of time who like the recipe of like 6-figure salary, like, you know, like cars in the driveway, blah, all that stuff worked. Yeah. And then it just somehow just like disseminated into like everyone else's mind, probably through like, again, like soft rules. Yeah. Or soft power, excuse me. Yeah. That's just like the predominant stance with so many people.
Yeah. And I think the funny thing is like to go in the very, very beginning of our conversation, we were just talking about, the power, influence, things like that, is like the guy's recipe for like, his happy life, the way it got passed down was through like companies that made certain ingredients. Yeah. And they were like, no, but like, you got to use like, like the recipes that you see on the back of like salt bottles. Yeah. Like, and it's like only you can use McCormick's finely ground sea salt. Yeah. And you're like, no, dude, like I'm pretty sure like the other, like the Walmart salt works too. Yeah. And I feel like that's like the same thing for a recipe for a happy life, is there's people with ulterior motives who like or companies with ulterior motives where like their way to make it and the like how they get revenue and make money is very dependent on convincing you that your happiness and your recipe to a good life needs to use their ingredients. Yeah. Like it doesn't, like it's not that it can't. I'm sure like it works for some people, but just make sure that you taste it first to see if that is the ingredient you want. Because they'll try to sell you the whole recipe, taste it before you cook the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, just because like you're cooking it does not mean you have to eat it or finish it. You can, if it really like does not like,
it really sucks.
Yeah.
You can toss it out, dude.
Yeah. And I say this to someone who has like, whether it's just my Asian upbringing, I have a hard time just like wasting food. So it's like, even if like the cookie is like way too salty, I'm like, it's a cookie, I'll finish it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the funny thing is that with life too, you know, like if that's a whole process, right?
Yeah.
There's the cooking has like a cooking time, which in this case is the duration of our life.
Yeah.
And you can scrap the whole recipe and start over, or you can like just like kind of take out some things. Sometimes when we screw up, like, and we're like, there's too many onions in there, you can actually just scoop out some of the onions. Like, you don't have to throw the whole thing away, you know? So I think like there's so many ways to go about it, and it is based on like, as you taste it, like, is it so gross that it's unsalvageable and you got to start from scratch?
Yeah.
Is it just a shift? You know, do you need to just throw away one whole portion, you know, and like do other stuff? So it's like there's an improvisatory nature to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like inherently being creative, you know.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
And you bring up a great point, right? And I want to ask, I think it's important to like get clear on this, where, right, it's like your life and the timeline of the duration is like the cooking time, whatnot. So I guess for you, right, it's like, then what does a well-lived life look like for you? Or like feel like to you? And like I can describe as well, because the reason I ask this question is because so many people think that the well-lived life will reveal itself later, or that they can only live it when I have this promotion, when I get married, when I have kids, like blah, 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 so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you're not living it now, then who's to say you're going to live it later? It's like, and I ask it because and I'll chime in later, but it's like, if you really break down the components, the ingredients of what a well-lived life are to you, then who's to say you can't start embodying them now? Like, why do you have to wait?
Yeah. I totally agree. The well-lived life. Well, okay, so like if I were to give a high-level overview of my recipe for it, right? I definitely feel like I'm living it now.
Amazing.
There's like no question.
Yes.
And I think the important thing is that, like, okay, so I want to be careful about it because I'm living it now, and the way that it looks now fits it, but it could look different and it would still fit it.
Yes.
So I want to make that really clear, right, before I get into it. But like, just on a day-to-day, like just what are the things about this life that are great? Well, right now, and this is changing very soon, I love this house that I live in. Like, I've got these like 3 great friends from like literally my elementary school years who I trust and I'm tight with, and we hang out, we play League at night sometimes. We eat, we're gonna watch Spider-Man later this week. We have fun together.
Yeah.
We make memories, you know? These are things that I foresee like 20 years from now when I hang out with them again. I'll be like, remember that like stupid thing that we did like when we were like 24 years old and like that one house we lived in? That's good stuff, you know? As you know, as my wife told you earlier, we went to Navy Pier and just hung out. Like that was really good. I loved doing that. Like just hanging out with her, eating some good food, like enjoying each other's presence.
Yep.
Yesterday, Memorial Day, I worked at the Filipino restaurant.
Yep.
We got to cook for all these different customers. I was really coaching one of my coworkers on different cooking techniques. We were connected. He's Indian.
Yep.
So, and he's actually a computer science graduate student.
Okay.
So we were connecting about computer science. I was asking him what he loved about computer science, about that job, asking him what he loved about cooking. He was sharing me some of his favorite memories of like helping his mom in the kitchen and things like that. I was showing him tricks on how to like smash garlic really fast and like, you know, and just like joking around with Larry, and then he let me off early, so I hung out with you guys. Like, oh my God, like these are just so everyday, like they're not that big of a deal, but they bring me a lot of joy.
Yes.
And I feel like, yeah, like the same answer when you people ask people like, oh, what's going on in your life? And it's like, yeah, I go to work and I spend time with my friends and my family. I like that. Like,
Yes.
I like going to work and I like hanging out with my friends. My response isn't like, oh, yeah, I did it, you know, same old.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
gosh,
oh, yeah, I did it. And it was awesome, dude. Like, it was so fun.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And yeah, and I think like there's always room for, you know, in my life, like a life well lived also always looks like growing and learning in some aspect. And I think that one of the key ways in which I'm really focusing and growing and learning right now is in my relationship with my wife, because it's really new. Like we've only been married 3 months at this point. We've only been dating for a year and 3 months.
Yeah.
I'm still dating her, by the way, would still say so.
Of course.
It's very important to like never stop. And there's a lot of things about her that baffle me, that frustrate me, that I'm like, yo, why are you this way? You know? And lots of ways in which I'm trying to help her understand me better too.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my effort for learning and growing is going into nurturing and building that relationship.
Yes.
And that is very difficult, but a very joyful experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have so much to say there. The person's like, whatever you just said, it's like you're not seeing that on a Coke commercial.
Yeah.
You know, that's not what they're selling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then also really quick, it's like, so how do you crush garlic? What do you mean? Like, what's your fast way? Like, do you just? I mean, the way I do is like knife and just like, you know. Chop it. Okay.
Like people oftentimes just do the thing and they do the heel, right? You need a Chinese. So if you need a Chinese cleaver for this,
okay, exactly.
But when you hold it between like in this joint, and you have this finger on the top side of the knife.
Yeah.
And so when you smash it, your knife blade is horizontal. You kind of like smash down with the tip and drag, and it takes half a second. Like literally each clove of garlic, I'm smash. Like I could do like 3 or 4 cloves in like 2 seconds, right? And they're completely flat, and it just makes it that when you chop it, like it takes no time to like get it minced.
I definitely use the Chinese cleaver, but I do not do it that way. I have to like lay it flat and then like use like
and then do that. That's like 4 times slower. Which I would say for home cooking doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
When you're in a restaurant and you're trying to process like, you know, 2 boxes of it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Okay, I wanted to ask that first, just my own knowledge.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? Where I think about it, and I think the crazy part to me is that it's rare for someone to say they're already living their well-lived life. At least, especially in people, not even just with people, but especially with people in our age bucket, with people older, it's like, it's so rare to hear someone who's like, yeah, I actually like enjoy my life.
Yeah.
And I've gotten the same response from other people as well when I tell them that. We're like, I live every day no differently. And I'll say this though, it's like, it's a little different for me in the sense that admittedly, my current way to pay the bills is not what I give a shit about.
Yeah.
But like in that sense, like that's how it could look differently, is that if I replace the hours 9 to 5, 5 days a week with what I know, and the thing is I'm already doing it.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it outside of the hours 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
But if I could just replace those hours with what I love doing, done. That's it. I'm already doing it. It's like a different like mix right now.
Yeah.
And that's the thing where it's like, when you really break it down to the fundamental components, like what is the well-lived life for you, you can start incorporating it now. Like, why are you waiting? Like, why are you like slaving away at a job that you do not like because you're telling yourself that this will lead to a well-lived life in the future? But in reality, it's like you're just still ascribing to that same Coke commercial version of it. You haven't defined it for yourself.
Yeah.
But if you define it, you can do it now, which might mean like it literally might mean you don't work that job. And like in my case, I was like, my well-lived life is very much centered around relationships, and this job clearly does not align with that. Okay, I'm going to take it out.
Yeah.
Like, I'll replace it.
Yeah. And I think it's like, there's some fear of change in a lot of people.
Yeah.
My wife included. She's very much like, she's like, oh, I'm highly resistant to change.
Yeah.
But sometimes the change is really good.
Of course.
You know, and it's always worth, I think the resistance to change is still important in the sense that it allows us to weigh if the change is worth making.
Yeah.
Because I do think, for example, like the Malaysian restaurant I worked at, I told you about my insane boss that I had there, right? And, you know, sometimes it's like when we're cooking and we taste, we get like different flavors. And we're like kind of like not sure whether that is the flavor combination that like we think is like good just yet, right?
Yep.
And so like maybe you just keep cooking it and then you like taste it again in like a couple weeks. And I think that the process, like there's also a way to acknowledge that sometimes in life we make some sacrifices in one area in order to, as long as we feel that there's a connection that like we are doing that for a reason to, you know, maximize something in another area, I think that's the key, right?
Yeah.
So like when I worked with like that like really awful boss,
Yep.
like if that was the only thing I felt, I would have quit immediately. But like the other thing that I was really feeling was like, you know, this is a kitchen where I speak my language. Like everybody speaks Cantonese here. And what we're learning to cook is like the stuff that I've always wanted to learn how to cook. Like I'm really passionate about this kind of cooking. And I was like, but oh my God, like this boss is such a nightmare to deal with. Like he really makes my life miserable.
Yep.
But I was kind of like, you know, as long as I'm still learning and they're letting me like learn the stuff that I'm excited about learning about, I'll keep doing this.
Yep.
But then I think there came a point where I stopped being able to do that. Like they wouldn't let me do these things I was passionate about, you know, and it grew very just discouraging every day. And I came back and my wife was like, you just look tired and you look exhausted. Like this isn't good. And at that point I started being like, okay, like I should start looking into other job opportunities. Like when is an ideal time to quit, you know? And I really planned that around like us getting, so I quit like after we got married basically, because I was like, well, you know, I will put up with this job for now. Getting married is more important. Like it's going to pay some bills in the meantime. And like, let's get that out of the way. And then afterwards I can really focus on finding something else to do, you know? It's like active agent, but yeah.
I think that's the thing. And like, I can speak similar to that, where it's like, ultimately it's like, it has to serve something that resonates with you. And once it stops serving you, then just like drop it. You know, and like ultimately it's like, I think it kind of boils down to, well, first like deciding like, okay, what is it that I want to serve first off, so you know like if it actually aligns with that. But by all means, it's like you're not obligated to stay. And I feel like a lot of people, because starting again at the beginning, where it's like they don't know what they want to serve, they don't know what they value, their sense of agency goes out the window, and they feel like they would have stayed in like that job with like the terrible boss or unhealthy environment. And I guess like when I think about, to kind of like provide like my own context of like what the well-lived life looks like for me, like I feel like I've really boiled it down to, okay, how do I live in accordance with my values? And for me, it's, I guess like to put into a statement, it's the freedom to live life and make impact in a manner authentic to me. Freedom being a huge piece to me. Like I want to have the freedom to be able to do the things that enable me to make impact in a way that is authentic. So for me, a lot of that is like exploring like my curiosity, my learning, and like being able to apply it to my own life so that I can share it and use it to connect with others and help them, you know, better their own. And again, reach that higher purpose of empowering them to believe and dream more. And it's like, that doesn't take much. I don't need to live in like a fancy apartment. I don't need to drive a fancy car. I don't need to like make a ton of money to do that. Like it's so simple when you break it down. And obviously it takes a lot of self-awareness and reflection to get to that point, as we can say in both our cases.
Yeah, I think like, you know, one thing that I've been reflecting a lot on is how that model has worked really well for me. I think especially when I was single, I full send, like totally believe that. And now that I'm married, like I'm definitely understanding like how, as I'm tasting, some things are changing. And I think it's a really big reason why I've told Hope, like, let's hold on the kids for a little bit. Because I think, like, you've expressed yourself that you really want to be a father someday. You really want to be there for your kids. And I think that, like, you know, I see that, like, sometime in my future, most likely, especially since, like, she really wants kids. But I think that, like, kind of the way, like, the things that are important for me to do at that point would change. In the sense that I would be like making sure that my kids are like, they have a safe place to live and, you know, feel cared for and loved and things like that, would really like, it's a simple goal, right? But I think there's like other considerations that would play into it. And I don't know exactly to what extent that is, right? I think that like what it definitely isn't is, oh, I just need to make as much money as possible, right?
Yep.
But I think it is like kind of a thing of like, well, you know, what kind of school do they want to go to? How much time do they want to have to spend with them?
Yep.
You know, what kind of relationship what kind of people are they going to be around? Like all those sorts of things become factors in how I decide whether the current life I'm living is like the best one, you know? Yeah.
And that's the thing where it's like, once you have like other things that are on your plate, it ultimately will affect how you serve that. And especially with kids, it's a huge thing. Is like when you bring them into the picture, it affects what you do to serve that. Cause like they are the most important thing in your life.
Yeah.
And I also want to bring this into play where I feel like, we talked about this a bit, you know, like over the past couple of days, but I feel like dating is such a topic where knowing yourself just comes into play so much.
It's really important.
And I don't disagree with people who are like, oh, like, you know, the more people you date, the more you'll like start to like, you know, understand who you are, like what you're looking for. But it's like, my general approach to life, whether it's like dating, career, whatever, is like, if you just take the time to like slow down, reflect, and like really taste and analyze or like, you know, ask yourself like, what is it that like seems off, or like what resonates with me?
Yeah.
You can avoid the like mishaps in between, like the terrible breakups or like the really shitty jobs, by just exercising some intention and some self-awareness. Where like, to be truthful, it's like I've never been in a long-term relationship.
Me neither.
Like
until now.
Oh yeah. I was like, yeah.
Like she's the first person I dated.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's incredible. It's like to find your life partner. But again, like, and like through the conversations we've had, you and I, and also just talking to Hope, it's like when you know yourself well enough and what you're allowed to know what you're looking for, and lo and behold, it works out. And that's kind of how in my own life, where again, like, I've never had a quote unquote dating experience, but not to sound like holier than thou, but like I know myself pretty damn well.
Yeah.
And like I know very clearly like what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And the sense that like I'm not going to settle, and also it's like I know like having gone on dates with people and just like having meeting people, it's like I know exactly like right off the gate, like if they are meeting that, and that comes from knowing yourself, but it comes from having that internal compass. And like I feel like it's such like a bizarre thing for people in our age bucket to think about, is like, oh, if you just like know yourself, you'll like be able to like, you know, find your life partner, or it's like, you know, like you're also like comfortable with like not dating. You know? Yeah. And like I think it's like I'm just, given my circumstances, being like, again, in like a different world or like it's like environment than you are, it's like, especially, you know, being in New York City and like that environment, it's like, and also just like our age bucket, but it's like it's so interesting and unique to me to hear someone who's like, again, like this age, who is already in like a emotionally healthy, mature relationship and married. Because to some people, they're like, what the hell? Like, I don't even know myself yet. I don't even know how to like, you know, pay like my credit card bill or like pay taxes. How could I like find a partner?
Yeah. You know, and you know, here's what I'd say. Like, I think that stuff about like needing to know how to pay your credit card bill and how to pay your taxes is like, there are markers of adulthood that we as a society put on adulthood.
Yeah.
Hope did not really know how to do a lot of those things. Yeah. I was the one that knew how to do them. But who's to say that even if I didn't, we couldn't learn together?
Exactly.
You know, like the things that she did have figured out were the things that were relevant to determining whether or not you could commit to someone. Yeah. And I think that like the true like reason why people are like, oh yeah, like married, like I couldn't imagine myself, is because the idea of committing to somebody like that scares you. Yeah. Because you don't feel like you know yourself well enough to know if you could commit like that to somebody for a lifetime. Yeah.
And that key word you bring up, commitment, right? So many people are afraid of commitment. And that applies to so much in life, where like I think a big thing for a lot of people is, and like to kind of bring it back to, they have like that thing in their heart that is like the thing that sings to them, whether it's cooking, writing, dancing, whatever. And they know that, but they're afraid to commit because of the uncertainty, because of not knowing themselves. And like ultimately that's what separates those who leave it as a hobby and those who turn it into like their vessel for their purpose. Similar as like, you know, those who just like kind of, you know, dilly dabble in like dating, and like those who are able to find a secure, loving relationship earlier on.
Yeah. I think so. Here's an interesting thing about, you know, some of my thoughts about dating and people who say they learn about themselves through dating.
Yeah.
I think that it's actually possible if you, depending on how you approach it, right?
Yes.
So like, I think that people who get into a committed relationship just cause is like, that's like really not the move.
Yeah.
And that's how you get things like painful breakups and like those I feel like are very avoidable, you know? But people who are like, oh, I'm seeing people, like I am, you know, sometimes you give somebody a chance because you think that they check out with a lot of things, but you're like, I don't know them well enough yet, you know? And I think that it's a reason why I've told you before that most of the girls that I've fallen for in the past have been my close friends. And I think part of it with me was because I was like, well, I don't want to get romantically involved with anybody that I'm not sure is like really like a good person for me. Yeah. Which I think actually necessitates that you're really good friends with them before getting into a romantic relationship with them. You simply don't know a stranger well enough to determine whether or not like they vibe with you enough, right?
Yep.
So I think that a big mindset shift for me when it came to romantic relationships when I decided to do apps and try online dating was it's okay to date somebody and be like kind of in this process of like feeling it out, but feeling it out with like I know what I'm trying to find.
Exactly. Yes.
You know?
Yes.
I think that's the key. It's like the way that you interact with somebody is also like it's also respectful, right? Because when it comes down to like if it doesn't work out and you need to break up with them, you're able to honestly say like, here were the things that like didn't really work out in our relationship. And you could, and even that communication allows the partner to either be like, hey, like I'm gonna work on that. So can we stay and keep working on it? Or they have the option to be like, that's not me, and like, sure, like let's end this, right? But then those are much more healthy, mature breakups where like people actually leave it feeling like I've grown and I've learned something 100%. From this, as opposed to just like oh my God, like what an awful experience. You know?
A lot to say there, but I think that's the thing, right? It's like knowing yourself, it sounds so obvious, is like the ultimate filter that cuts through everything. It's so easy to like be able to say yes or no to things or people when you know yourself and like have your filters. And it's interesting because, like, again, I've also had experience with dating apps, and like, I'm that guy who, like, on the first date will just like ask you stuff, like, what makes you happy? What's your happiness? Like, you know, what are you like? You know, like, and like, it's so interesting. It's like people around me will be like, oh, dude, like, you can't do that on like a first date, or like, you know, blah blah. I'm like, well, why not? It's like if I know what I'm looking for,
scare people away.
Yeah, it's like okay, well, great. It scares them away.
It scares away the people that I don't want to date.
It's like it literally it saves me. It saves me having to go on another date, and it's like oh, you need a second chance. It's like well, maybe if you don't really know. I'm not saying in certain cases yes. But like in most cases, if you know yourself really well and you meet someone, you can tell in your gut or your heart if it's like something that you can like see yourself investing in. You know, just as much as like, you know, our conversations, I know in my heart that I'm going to invest in this relationship. And in that sense, it's like, oh my God. And like to your point, like again, on the other flip side, we're like, yes, say it doesn't work out and you commit, you have the self-awareness to grow from it and to help the other person grow. Cause you'd be like, hey, like it didn't work out because of like these sort of patterns or habits of yours. It's not you, it's the patterns and the habits. And then they're aware of that. Not just like, like it just didn't feel right.
And sometimes, you know, here's a really interesting thing. Like with one of my friends who I was very, very close with, and like I caught feelings for her and we talked about it. She was like very mature about how she tried to handle it. And, you know, there were moments where she's like, okay, I'm a little confused myself. I don't know what's going on. But she was like, give me time to figure it out. And I was like, I really appreciate that, because rather than just like coming out with like some like, she was like, I have a lot of feelings that I need to like think about it. But the important thing is that she was like taking it seriously, and she was like, I need some time to taste it. You know? And she took that time, and then she came back and she gave me some like answers for like what she thought like wouldn't work out, like these kinds of things. And ultimately, like she was kind of, like it kind of ended on a like, I really deeply respect you as a person and our friendship is still really valuable to me. But she was also like, I don't want to be like selfish about it. And be kind of like, but I want, like, she understands that like there's like emotions involved too. And so we gave each other space, and kind of like took some time away. And now we're like good friends again. And she was one of the first people I called when I met Hope, because I was like, hey, like, I think I met like a really great person. And like, and there just was a, like, I think it's a huge sign of like just maturity, growth, like open communication, when those things are able to end in people still being genuine friends, not like the low-key jealous that like the other person is like in a relationship. It's like you really can get back to that place.
Yes.
And like I thought, it came from again, the self-reflection, the self-awareness, the honesty and the courage to like tell the other person how you're really feeling. Like those are character traits that like got to be developed and that are like an essential component of a healthy relationship.
So well said.
Yeah.
We need to put a stamp on that. But like also that's the thing where, again, it's like you always hear that cliche. It's like you can't be friends with your exes, but it's coming from people who just like are having like those experiences where it's like it's not a clean break, or it's like they don't understand themselves, and like it ended in, like, and it's like there wasn't like a clear understanding of like why it came to an end.
And so then it's like the awkward on-off constant.
Exactly. And like I've been there for like but it's like at the end of the day, it's like I feel like when you, whether it comes to like, and like I had a similar experience like with this, not necessarily ending, but like with like a friendship of mine, friendship relationship, they're similar, but like obviously romantic is like a little, more deeper than that. But like in the sense that with this friend and I, we both understand ourselves very well, and we ended up having a conversation where we both acknowledged why we're not as close anymore. This is someone that I in college, I was like, he's my greatest friend in the world. Like I'm gonna like go to my grave with this guy. And now that's not the case, and like I don't feel any sort of bitterness or ill will, and like neither does he. And like we were able to talk through and like just come to like just a very agreeable understanding. And it's like like we still unconditionally love and support each other. Recognize there are just certain facets that are going to affect our ability to be close friends.
I think that honesty and self-knowledge really affects more than just romantic relationships. All of our interpersonal relationships are affected by just how if we can be upfront with each other, and
And I feel like the biggest, and that's like, to bring it back to the emotional intelligence, EQ, whatever you want to call it, whatever term you want to slap on it. What I've realized through like my own journey, because like I think it's like it doesn't stop. Like I'm constantly still trying to work on like my emotional intelligence and my self-awareness, is that the reason why I'm so passionate about this and why I put so much work into it is because the more self-aware and understanding you are of yourself, the more you are of others, and ultimately you go about life in a way where you're hurting less people unintentionally. That's the difference, because I realized this is someone myself. I probably hurt a lot of people unintentionally because I didn't know myself to act in a way that was intentional. When you know yourself, you're able to, again, like resolve situations, like come to endings and whatnot in a way that doesn't negatively impact the other person. And it's like that's what I truly believe, where it's like it doesn't take like you like becoming a doctor. It doesn't take you like, jumping out of like, I don't know, a burning building to like, not jumping out of a burning, but like, going to a burning building to like save it or whatever. It takes just working on yourself, which you can do at any time, any day, and you will have an impact on the world, because your impact on the world is ultimately directed by how you interact with others.
Wow, that was actually a really big moment when you were like, your self-knowledge prevents you from unintentionally hurting others. Because I think that all of our dialogue around knowing yourself and working on yourself and things like that, it's all around like, how can you become a better you, like best version of yourself. But the truth is that like, when you don't work on yourself, probably the people that are most hurt by it are like all the people surrounding you that get affected by your actions. Like, if you don't know yourself, you're just oblivious to all of it. But other people are confused by the ways that you behave, by like, you kind of like sit in this comfortable obliviousness to the ways in which you're actually like, trampling over other people's emotional lives. And like, that's obviously like, I feel like I've been on the receiving end of like, somebody that multiple people who lacked like the emotional awareness to communicate and be open, and actually, in fact, like when I ask questions, would like deny things or say things that they truly believed, but it was because of their lack of self-awareness.
Yes.
That really affected me. And like, I think, I've also recognized how I do that all the time too. And I think there's a lot of moments between me and Hope where I reflect on it. I realize that my lack of self-awareness was probably causing tension. And then I go to her and I'm like, hey, the real reason why I behaved this way towards you was because I was frustrated about this. I was angry about this. And I was like, it shouldn't have been directed at you. I'm sorry. That had nothing to do with you.
Yes.
Like, that was on me to like figure out myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I resonate with that so much. And that's the thing where at the end of the day, all the thing about self-relation with yourself and all that, it's like all like, it's to serve you, but ultimately it's like, it's about serving others.
It is.
Day, right?
Yeah.
And that's what purpose is about. It's serving others. And like, that's what I reaffirm to myself when I am working on myself. Is that this is ultimately, so like, I mean, let's excuse intentional hurt. That shouldn't be, but like the unintentional hurt that I've both given and received so much in my life.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if we all just focus on minimizing the amount of unintentional hurt we bring into the world, so many things would resolve themselves. That's what I truly believe.
Yeah.
And I had a similar experience with like my own parents, which I mentioned, like I don't have like the greatest relationship with them.
Yeah.
But
it's a lot of unintentional hurt.
Oh, there, right? Yeah. Both like that I received and both I gave. And it took me a lot of time to work out, what it was that I was really dealing with. I needed to give myself like that time and space and those boundaries to figure it out. And when I went home a couple weeks ago, I laid it on the table. I explained like kind of where I was coming from and like owned up to if I had caused any unintentional harm.
Yeah. 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 That's like I mean, when it comes to like kind of what you asked in my life purpose, love God, love others. Loving others looks like taking the time to know myself.
Of course.
And giving people real apologies. Because just because you didn't mean to do something doesn't mean it's still not your fault.
Of course.
It
doesn't mean anything if you keep apologizing for the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's like also like, it's kind of like you get into a car accident, just because it was an accident doesn't mean that you still have to like, it's not still your responsibility to fix it if you caused it,
Exactly. And that's the whole thing about like ultimately where it's, to serve others, you have to serve yourself first. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And if you lose the greater picture of it and like the greater landscape of like serving others, then it's easy to fall off the wagon, or it's easy to do so in a way that isn't genuine or resonates with you.
Yeah. Some good thoughts.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess like, okay, to kind of like wrap things up or conclude here, where my question for you is, if you think back to just like given the context of our conversation so far, it's like, and again, like we went through a lot. We went through our own quest together there to get to this point. But what sort of seeds or questions would you have planted along the way for your younger self to come across?
Like seeds, to like encourage more like self-awareness, reflection.
Yeah, just
like
like
little Chris.
It could be like questions, whatnot. That's like one example I use, like just questions.
One of the big ones is actually about girls.
Amen.
And because I do think like that's where some of my like cringy, like embarrassing moments came from as like a young child.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I would ask is just kind of like how you were saying, like, wow, this one girl represented like, this unconditional love for me, or this like, I think I would ask beyond like what does this person represent to you, and is what they represent to you realistic? Is like a really important one. I think it would have saved me a lot of heartache. I had a crush on the same girl for like 4 years in high school, like all 4 years of high school.
Yeah.
And like I knew she didn't like me back.
Yeah.
But we were like very close friends.
Yeah. Oh, that's painful.
Yeah. And so like I think, so that one's a wild story. we reconnected during COVID, and she was like she treated me very differently that time, and so I was like,
wow,
is something happening again? And then it was a case of she caused me a lot of unintentional hurt on her part. But we don't really talk anymore after that. Fair
enough,
like I think that's a big thing I would ask myself. I think maybe another one would be, why do you care so much about whether people think you're smart or not? Yeah, this is like, also relevant to our earlier conversation.
Yeah.
And then I think I would ask like young Chris. I mean, I wouldn't want to traumatize him like this either, but like, the spirit of it would be like, how would you spend time with your dad differently if you knew that he would be dead when you were 15?
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And we didn't even, I had like written this down, but we didn't even get into the topic of like mortality and time and whatnot, which is like a whole another rabbit hole in itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess like I'd love to continue the conversation on that, but like I guess like one thing that I'll
what would you say to your kids?
Yeah, I would say like, and I had some other answers yesterday that I gave with Caleb, which were, who am I? Who do I want to become? And like, am I living in alignment with that? But I also similarly had one which was like, if my life were to end at the end of this year and next year didn't exist, what would I regret not doing? Similar on the topic of mortality, which I think about a lot. But I'd say, given the context of this conversation, the one question I would ask my younger self is, what do you really need right now? And it's like, and like you just keep asking that. It's like, what do you really need right now?
Yeah.
You say something, ask it again.
Asking him the taste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Do you like the taste?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, dude. This was awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know like how long this conversation went for, but this was so lovely, and I'm very grateful for you and for this friendship. That again, it's crazy that we've only known each other for like, what is it, like less than 72 hours?
Yeah.
And like only in like certain pockets of those 72 hours. I feel so endeared to you, and like you're like, from like the moment that Caleb was literally telling me about you while we were walking to your house, I was like, this guy sounds amazing. And like by like the grace of whatever, like you happened to be home when we got back and went to dinner, and I'm so grateful that things played out that way and that we were able to have this conversation as a result. Yeah.
I'm really thankful for that too.
Yeah. Thank you, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, dude. There we go.
Yeah.